The train screamed once, a dying whistle swallowed by the desert wind, then rattled off across the horizon. It smote a black scar in the pale sky. Silence fell on the station platform, broken only by the scrape of boots and the clatter of a loose shutter against sun-baked wood. She remained there, white dress dulled to gray by dust, veil torn at the edge, a trunk beside her like a coffin nailed shut. Her hands trembled on her lap, but she kept her head bowed, tears slipping through her fingers. The crowd shifted, whispers rolling like dry tumbleweed across the boards. Left her, bride without a groom. Bad luck that. No one stepped forward. No one claimed her. The station agent cleared his throat once, then looked away, as if the sight of her burned his eyes. Women pulled their children closer. Men touched their hat brims, then drifted off, pretending they hadn't seen. A horse snorted, stamping its hoof on the hard ground. The sheriff leaned on a post, but said nothing, the brim of his hat hiding his face. Even he would not carry her burden. She raised her eyes then, eyes red from crying, wide with something deeper than sorrow. For a breath the town seemed to freeze. The desert wind caught her veil, snapping it like a warning flag. No one moved. The sun blistered overhead. Heat shimmered across the tracks. Her tears fell soundless onto the planks, each one vanishing into the dust before it could be seen. The silence stretched, heavier than gun smoke. Then a child's voice rang out. "That's my mama." Heads turned. A boy stood near the hitching rail, no more than 10 years old, freckles dark against his sunburned face. He pointed with a steady hand, his eyes locked on the weeping woman. Whispers hushed to stillness. The bride's lips parted, breath catching like a lasso pulled tight. The boy's father, a broad-shouldered rancher, stepped forward quick, alarm sparking in his eyes. He set a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Hush, son. You don't." But the boy pulled free, running across the platform, boots thudding on wood. He stopped before the bride, chin lifted with the kind of certainty grown men don't often carry. "I said, that's my mama." The words cut through the dust and silence, sharp as a whip crack. The woman's tears slowed. Her veil shifted in the wind. The townsfolk leaned forward, waiting, as though the desert itself held its breath. And in that moment, every man and woman present knew. The story of the crying bride was no longer hers alone. Lantern light flickered across the ranch house walls, throwing long, crooked shadows that danced like restless spirits. The bride, her dress packed away, replaced by a plain calico, sat at the long table, silent as the family's supper cooled untouched. The boy leaned against her, small hand gripping her sleeve as though afraid she might vanish like smoke. Outside, the wind dragged grit across the shutters. A coyote howled in the canyon, sharp and hungry. The rancher cleared his throat but found no words. His wife's spoon clinked against her bowl, then stilled. "You can stay," the rancher muttered at last, eyes fixed on the knot of wood in the table. "For the boy's sake. Nothing more." The woman nodded once. No thanks, no plea. Only silence, heavy enough to press the air flat. Later that night, when the others slept, she carried her trunk to the porch. The hinges groaned as the lid opened, lantern glow spilling over folded dresses and a bundle wrapped tight in old cloth. Her hand shook, but not from fear. She unwrapped the bundle. Metal gleamed, cold, familiar. A revolver, worn smooth along the grip. She held it as one might cradle a child, her face carved with memories she would not speak. Bootsteps scraped behind her. The boy. He stopped short, wide eyes catching the shine of steel. "You ain't no bride," he whispered. Her jaw tightened. She lowered the revolver back into the trunk, snapping the lid shut. "Go on," she said, voice raw, "before your pa wakes." The boy lingered, then shuffled back inside, his words hanging in the air like the rattle of a snake. By morning, the town had already begun to stir with gossip. At the mercantile, women bent their heads together, voices sharp as sewing needles. A bride without a husband, a trunk heavy as stone, a past she won't tell. On the street, a rider galloped hard, dust trailing his heels. His shouts carried clear. The Graythorn gangs crossed the river, took cattle, burned a shack. The sheriff, leaning against his post, tipped his hat low, saying nothing. Folks looked away, each man pretending it wasn't his fight. That evening, from the porch, the woman watched storm clouds gather in the west, shadows deepening across the canyons. She could feel the weight of the revolver in her trunk as if it called her name. And in the hush before the storm, the boy stood at her side, whispering, "If they come here, you'll stop them. I know you will." Her breath caught. She turned her face from him, but her hand curled into a fist, knuckles white as bone. The wind rose, carrying the scent of rain and smoke. Trouble was riding closer. Flames licked the night sky, painting the canyon rim blood red. Smoke rolled heavy over the valley as riders tore past the burning homestead, their laughter carrying like wolves in the dark. Chickens scattered. A cow bellowed once, then silence swallowed the sound. At the ranch, the boy clung to the porch rail, eyes fixed on the glow. "They're coming here," he whispered. Inside, the rancher lay pale on his bed, bandage soaking through where lead had torn him open earlier that day. His wife pressed cloth to the wound, tears streaking her face, but the blood would not stop. The house smelled of iron and fear. The woman stood at the window, veil of smoke drifting across her reflection. Her hand hovered near the trunk in the corner, the lid shut tight, but trembling as though something inside longed to break free. Hoofbeats thundered nearer. Dogs barked, chains rattling. A lantern swung wild in the yard, shadows leaping high across the barn wall. The boy rushed to her, clutching her skirt. "Don't let him take us. Don't let him." Her throat worked, no words coming. Instead, her gaze fixed on the canyon beyond, where memory bled into the night. A younger version of herself stood there once, watching her husband fall, shot down before her eyes. His killers had laughed then, too. She'd sworn never again. But oats crumble when fire burns at your door. The gang's shouts cracked the air. "Open up. Land or blood." Boots hit the ground. Spurs clinked. A rifle but slammed against the door. The rancher's wife sobbed. The rancher tried to rise, groaning, but fell back helpless. The woman crossed the room in 3 strides. The trunk groaned open. Steel glimmered in the lamplight as she lifted the revolver, its weight settling into her palm like an old friend returned. The boy's eyes widened, not with fear, but with fierce belief. The door shook under the force of another blow. Dust sifted from the rafters. She pulled back the hammer, click sharp as a rattler's warning. The room froze in that sound. Outside, the gang cursed and shouted. One man laughed, low and cruel. The woman stepped forward, veil gone, hair loose around her face, eyes dark as storm clouds. The boy whispered, "They don't know who you are." Her lips pressed thin. The revolver gleamed. Another strike splintered the door. She leveled the gun and whispered back, "They will." Dawn split the horizon, thin light spilling over the dust-choked street. Boards creaked beneath her boots as she stepped into the open, revolver riding low on her hip. The town held its breath. Curtains twitched. A church bell groaned once, then went still. The Graythorn gang waited, horses snorting, guns glinting. Their leader, a scar down his jaw, smile carved like a knife, spat into the dirt and took a slow step forward. "Well, if it ain't the bride left on the platform," he drawled, voice echoing off empty storefronts. "Guess you want to join your dead man." The woman's eyes narrowed. Wind whipped her hair across her face. She said nothing. Her hand hovered above the revolver, fingers steady. The boy stood in the doorway behind her, silent as stone. A crow cawed overhead. The gang shifted, spurs clinking, laughter thin as glass. "Draw," the leader sneered. For a heartbeat, the town froze. Only the rasp of breath, the grind of boots in dirt. Then steel flashed. Her gun barked once, fire and smoke bursting from the barrel. The leader staggered back, eyes wide, the grin gone forever. His men lunged for iron, but she moved like lightning, each shot cracking sharp, each bullet finding its mark. Horses screamed. Dust rose in choking clouds. When the echoes died, the street lay silent save for the groans of the dying and the settling wind. She lowered the revolver, smoke curling from the barrel, the weight of it dragging at her arm. The boy ran to her side, clutching her waist, eyes shining not with fear, but fierce pride. From behind shuttered windows, townsfolk crept out, staring wide. Someone whispered, "Widowmaker." The name rolled across the street, passed from lip to lip until it became a chant. The woman holstered the revolver, veil torn, dress streaked with dust. Her gaze swept the town once, hard and final. The boy whispered, "Told you they didn't know." She touched his hair, eyes softening. For the first time since the station, she breathed easy. The old storyteller's voice drifts in then, carried on the desert wind. Some say she vanished into the canyon mists. Others swear she raised that boy as her own, teaching him the strength she carried hidden all along. But all agree on one thing. On that morning, when the bride stepped into the street, justice wore a veil of dust, and her legend was born.